Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott back on the show. How you doing, Cam?
Good. Time to crack open a cold one.
There you go. Excellent.
Uh,
What you drinking there? Game Fuel, looks like?
yep. I got tired of my local gas stations, CVS's, have been failing me. They have not been stocked in my game fuel,
Okay.
and so I said, you know what? Going right to the source. Mountain Dew. Uh, their website lets you purchase it, and then I found out that if I buy it through Amazon, then that's about 5% off.
Okay.
Like if I subscribe for it. So every 3 weeks,
You have it
or
basically ordered on a subscription?
pretty much, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Every 3 weeks, I'm gonna get 3 boxes. So
Well, between the two of us, we have a handful of games we'll be diving into and discussing today, including Cam's time with Valheim, which is probably, given that that is like the hotness of gaming right now, that'll probably be like the header of this episode. But he's also been playing more Final Fantasy XIV, while I have been juggling the dueling JRPGs of Bravely Default 2 and Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I also spent some time with Maquette, the PlayStation Plus game for this month, but also just small Annapurna indie game that came out a few days ago. But before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. I got a text from my mom saying that she's shared it with some grandkids of like one of her friends who are like ages 10 and 12. So welcome to them if they're listening. I immediately texted back. I was like, if they don't have a problem with language, yeah, I guess we're probably okay. And she was like, yeah,
I was about to say,
I figure they've probably heard it at 10 and 12. And I was like, all right. I mean, like we're not like cursing up a storm here, but we also don't.
and like we're never filthy or like
Yeah.
crude.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is like we are not like if we swear, it's usually as an expletive. It's
Mm-hmm.
never as anything crude or gross.
Yeah.
So
So, welcome to my mom's friends Shirley's grandkids, I guess. Hope you enjoy the show. If you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful monthly patrons, which I believe I gave a shout out last week. Let's dive into some of the games we've been playing. Cam, kick us off because Valheim is all I see people talking about in the gaming space right now. So tell us what Valheim is like.
so Valheim is a very 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 interesting take on the survivor builder genre. It is a team of I think it's 4 people that have put this game together over the last couple of years. But like the level of, let me put it this way, they nail everything they need to about it. Whether it's the feel of gameplay, you play third person. Essentially, the story is this: Odin put all of his enemies on one of the worlds, and then cut that world off from Yggdrasil, the world tree, and has recently found out that his enemies, his ancient enemies that he put there, are basically due to all wake up at the same time and then start a war with him. So to preempt this, he has taken heroes from Valhalla and sent them to Valheim to essentially establish themselves there, gather weapons and whatnot. Because you go in, like in your undies, and you're there to essentially start collecting resources, build up an armory, and then from there go take on these ancient enemies. And they are all very different. I have only taken on the first one mainly because I am a big builder person, so I create bases all over the place before I go and take anything on. And I kind of like have a different base for each stage of the game that I'm in. And right now I'm in the early metal forging period of time for it. So I quote unquote have entered the Bronze Age, so to speak. And it does just everything right, between letting you know about resources that you need for certain items that might be out of your reach at the time. But as soon as, but at the same time, getting recipes is not difficult. They pretty much give it to you as soon as you pick up an item that is related to it. Once you gather that resource for the first time, and it is just an absolute like point by point. It nails it from whether it's a simple to understand story, like your reason for being there, what you're doing, who you are, and like what your purpose is. And so from there, and on to top it off, they have a guide in the form of one of Odin's ravens that gives you essentially the next step of your journey. When you finally reach a certain point, it then will like be like, hey, this is kind of your next step.
So it's not necessarily like an aimless survival game. Where you kind of have to like figure out what to do. It is giving you kind of like objectives and breadcrumbs to follow. Okay, cool.
Exactly. This is not a Terraria or a Starbound where it's like an open world for you to explore and then discover these secrets and try to like figure it out by puzzles and whatnot. It's very much a like it gives you full freedom to do whatever you want, but if you want to follow the quest line, the Raven will be there to guide you. And lets you know about like, hey, you just picked this thing up. You should you can now get into this, or you can now do that. Or it gives you clues because it's like, hey, if you're gonna start needing to forge stuff, you need to pick up this item, and it's only found, and it just says under the earth. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And then finally I figured out that it meant burial tombs. And so and I found burial tombs. So it has like some dungeon stuff. Something that was really cool is that combat in the game is super simple, but it's extremely satisfying. And very, very, very just straightforward. But you are playing somebody from Valhalla. You're playing a Norse hero of legend or whatever. And so you are your character does not have, it's not as, I would say, static as Minecraft or something like that. You are very, action is extremely fluid. And on top of that, when you go there, you have basically ones in all your skills. But instead of it being you have to get this item to boost up your skill, it instead goes off of kind of the old Oblivion method, where by running around a lot,
use it.
Yeah. So if I'm running around and just jumping around everywhere from hill to hill or doing that, and just leaping across streams and rivers and stuff, I get bonuses to that. If I'm swimming around a lot, I get bonuses for that. And on top of that, the crafting system from the creatures in the world, whether it's from the boars and the deer to, I now regularly have methodology and strategy to take down trolls without any problem. The first troll popping up because it's a 4-man team, the model for a troll is ugly. But it is it's just a lot of fun. It's doing so much well and so much right about this genre that I never feel like any time I've spent in the game has been wasted. Even if I'm just putting in 20 or 30 minutes, that wasn't wasted. That was that had a point. That had a purpose of what I was doing. And I like that.
So, when I first started hearing about Valheim, I heard survival, and I was like, okay, nope, not my kind of game. What level of survival is it? Because you mentioned you've got, a whole bunch of bases built all around, so presumably you're not, dying and losing everything.
Oh, no, right? When you die, a marker is placed, and when you go back to that marker, you basically get all your inventory back.
Okay.
So it stores your inventory until you get back to your body, and then you reclaim everything.
Cool. And then is it like a shared world thing like Rust, where other people can kind of come in and mess up your day? It is? Okay.
It can be.
Okay.
It's based off you create your own server that you play on, and if you let people come in and do that, they can. Mm-hmm. Additionally, you can set up you can create an item that basically prevents people from doing that. Or you can create a server that's just private for you.
Yeah, okay.
Or it can be as simple as my friends can join, and I can even set up a password that they have to know to join. But Irrational Passions did a stream about a week ago, or almost a week ago-ish, that I hopped into the chat and I was like, oh, I love Valheim, and Scott White, who was running the stream, just said, dude, hop on in. Friends with Scott on Steam. It was easy as clicking his name on my friends list, going down to where it says he was playing Valheim, and I joined his game, and I immediately loaded in there.
Cool.
Net coding is super good. Playing online with friends is super awesome. Jarrett Green, who's been playing the game a lot more, had this like decked out like Game of Thrones cloak on, and I was just like, "What is that?" And he goes, "Yeah, dude." He goes, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden I'm seeing him chop down trees that I can't, and I was like, "What's going on?" He goes, "Well, I have a bronze axe." I was like, "My goal now is to get a bronze axe," and I have a bronze axe now. And let me tell you, I dominate with that because it cuts down your trees, it can cut down your enemies. It's so good.
You get to fulfill your dream of being a lumberjack. I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah, dude. And the great thing about this is that it's not just buildings you build yourself. It can be, but like I'm right now in the place called the Black Forest, where there are sometimes these stone towers that have kind of like, like a walls off on the entire thing, and I have like rebuilt this tower with wood supplement to essentially rebuild this tower, and I've now made it like my home forge. Like it is my home. My previous place was like just a big hut that I had created like a second tier level for to like sleep and live, and then below was like my crafting stuff. But this has totally changed it. I'm now living in like a tower that I've then built out to a point where I have like a patio. And it's on the coast. I just built a raft so I can go sailing around if I need to. Like it's great. Like the game really does it. And the thing about survival about the game, like, do you have to eat? Yes. How? Kind of. If you don't eat, you only have about 25 health.
Okay.
If you eat different foods, you gain more health. And as you do more survival stuff, like you keep eating foods and you keep yourself out there longer, the more health you get overall, like increases over time. So you can have a max of 3 food types on you at any time, and like that you've eaten, and you start to see the icon for that food flicker to tell you, hey, like it's running out. You could want to re-eat something, or you can eat a different food to replace it, and that keeps your HP up. You do not die if you don't eat. You do not die if you don't drink water. It's not that level of survivor, which is why I think that it knows what survivor mechanics to put in to have fun, and what mechanics exist that just are a pain in the ass. Because I've been playing also Raft, but that game is all about the micromanagement of your inventory, like your water and food intake, and it is just really, really annoying. Because I spend half my time dealing with that rather than actually like gathering resources and building.
Yeah, I remember the closest I ever really got to like a survival game was Fallout New Vegas. They had like a survival mode, and like I tried that at some point. Was like, this is way too just in the weeds and dealing with too much minutia for me, for my taste. So like I tend to avoid the genre. It's cool that they kind of recognize like, hey, these are some of the things that are, more likely to put people off of this. So let's modify what those survival elements are like, so they're still there for the people that really love them, but they're not, as detrimental as like, yep, you're going to starve to death. So I can appreciate that. When you hop into like Scott's game or Jarrett's game or something like that, are you taking your character with you, or because you're playing in their server, you're having to kind of like start fresh?
It's up to you.
Okay.
I brought in my pre-existing character, who I have lovingly named Ragnar Muffin. Like Ragamuffin, but Ragnar Muffin.
Of course.
Some people like. I'm like, I like.
Is
like
muffin spelled with like an umlaut over the U?
No, because I couldn't do I couldn't figure out the umlaut for it.
All right.
On the keyboard, so not.
It's disappointing. That's all I'm gonna say.
I know, but also
Ragnar Muffin.
Yeah, it'd be also Ragnar Muffin. Like, but I loved it because We were playing, and it was also Mike was playing, and he named his guy Leif Erikson.
Nice.
So it's like just fun stuff. It was super fun to play with friends. It's like multiplayer is great. Single player is fun and awesome, and like it has dynamic weather and all sorts of stuff. I love this game. It's in early access right now, so
That was
still
going to be my very next question. Was like, what is the state of the game? Is it early access? How
it is early access.
regularly are they like updating it and bringing in new elements or patches or something like that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Let me check let me take a look at the community hub real quick on Steam to see.
And did it just come to early access, or has it been in early access for a while and just finally some streamers kind of found it like Among Us and it blew up overnight?
Oh no, it's brand new.
Okay.
You've got to be kidding me. Sorry, I'm looking at somebody like freaking rebuilt like or they built out like a Japanese style castle. And I'm furious because that would have just the thought of doing that frustrates me, because the one thing I will say that's a knock against it is that building is not exactly like as tight as you want it to be.
Okay. That's like when you mentioned like, oh, you've built out a patio and stuff like that. I'm like, in my head, the closest analog or the immediate thing I think of is like, oh, well, if it's like Minecraft and you can kind of do everything on a grid or something, yeah, that's probably pretty easy. But then I also have seen a ton of other survival games out there that are not on a grid at all. Or even like I'll think of like Fallout 4's like base building stuff that was just terrible and I hated that. So
it's closer to Fallout 4 than Minecraft.
I imagine
it's still like you can use it to like lock together things, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not stupendous. I wish it was better, especially when it comes to roofing. Like roofing seems to be a problem for it because just the way that it's built out. But yeah, it looks like the community is super active.
Is there any like detriment to like not having a roof or having a roof that's off kilter, or is that just for cosmetic
aesthetic
stuff?
Purposes? It's purely for cosmetic and aesthetic purposes that I would like to have a much more organized roof.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to have a roof because if you don't, then your workbench won't work.
Okay.
It has to have a roof over it.
Okay.
As somebody who has their workbench outside, and I had to like make a mini roof on the side of my tower to give it one.
It's got like a little workers shed kind of area out there.
It's not really a shed so much as it's like my patio is like 100% like my back, like my forage yard.
Okay.
And I'm currently creating a dock at the back there in order to get access to my raft and whatnot. But the problem that I've been having is, so there are these things called gray dwarfs, which are essentially just like moss creatures and like forest creatures, and they like to come to my base and they want to try to kill me. And so I put down these stakes as defensive measures so they can't get onto my base. But if I want to like build out my dock, I'm gonna have to try to figure this out.
Okay.
So like that's where I'm at right now. And also on top of that, I don't have as wide of a berth of a ring that my workbench generates as I would have liked. So I might have to be making some rearrangements on some stuff. But it's incredibly cool.
So what are your kind of goals now? You've got your bronze axe, you've got a boat. What are your kind of next objectives?
My next objective is at this point finish building out my base the way that I really want it to. Then put all my focus into gathering as much tin and copper as possible to make more bronze. It takes 2 copper and 1 tin to make bronze. And doing that, I want to have a full set of armor of bronze with an axe and maybe even a spear of bronze in order to take on the next boss. So.
Okay. And yeah, what is that element like? The boss fighting element, I guess.
Bosses are cool.
Okay.
Bosses are very cool. I've only fought against one. I've seen other people play against the second one.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is a giant stag creature. That is almost like a not as gross looking twin of the cleric beast from
Bloodborne.
Bloodborne.
Okay.
Very much this massive stag-headed thing that is trying to kill you after you basically throw a bunch of deer heads on its altar to desecrate it, to summon it, and then
Rude.
yeah. But the thing about it is, so after I killed it, I got these 2 antlers from it, and these antlers I was able to forge one of them into essentially a pickaxe, which allowed me to, for the first time, start gathering stone and metal and other stuff in a much more efficient manner. So, it's great.
Is it like Minecraft where if you don't have that, you're punching stuff and it's just like eventually you're whittling it down and getting the materials?
No, if you do not have the tool, it's just 0 forever, the damage that you're doing to it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a fun little survival adventure game for you. I'm glad you're having a good time with it. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and it sounds like definitely sounds like something I would be more interested in picking up than your typical survival game. So,
Yeah,
very cool that they've kind of identified ways to welcome new people in.
Yep, they just recently announced, just on the 3rd, that they hit 5 million players.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on a good roadmap. The Iron Gate team, like I said, they're 4 people. They are a incredibly small studio, but they have put a enormous amount of heart into this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to just give utmost props to them, to the community that has already built out complete guides to crop building and mining and other stuff, to the people who are sharing their bases, these massive structures. Just so many, it's bringing together a lot of people the way Minecraft did, which is survival people, combat people, but at the same time creatives are coming into it, and they're really building it out and making things look gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's great.
It definitely reminds me, or makes me feel like, and this is part, I think, in part of this is trickling out from a conversation I think I had with Logan last week or something. But it feels very much like these are the people who grew up with Minecraft now growing up and looking for something that's a little more, adult or something like that. And so they're moving over to something like Valheim. And it's cool to see that they've had success. You're saying there's a 4-person team there. So with 5 million players, I'm sure they've all kind of made bank and now can, instead of just putting love and attention to it, they can also probably put money and resources to it as well. So
for sure. I mean, that's the great thing about early access games, is that it allows you to give a proof of concept of what you're doing in a way that I think is still better than Kickstarter or Indiegogo or anything like that. But it's harder to get that onto the green light. You have to get enough. Yeah, you have to get enough people supporting you on Steam Greenlight to then get greenlit to then put your game into early access. And this team?
Is it still that or did they make it more strict? Because I remember seeing thousands upon thousands of games going up on Steam every month in recent years, be it early access or just being launched on there, because you have stuff like asset flips and stuff like that. Did Steam really start cracking down on that, or is it just you're more pointing to discoverability is that much harder, so they have to actually go through certain hoops to get properly in the Steam Greenlight program and early access and stuff like that?
So, yes and no. Anybody can. So when you submit a game to Steam, it will be considered for being put up. What they've so thousands of games do go up almost every month on Steam. But the difference of that being not just discoverability, but also, what was I going to say? Also, a lot of those games are games trying to get greenlit. So they put out an alpha build or the beta build, and they're trying to get people to play it and endorse it so it gets greenlit and goes into early access. So a lot of games that they So here's the thing. a lot of times I think people are counting store pages that go up without the actual product being sold on the store page. Because there's a lot of games on the like the Steam store front that don't have an actual like downloadable
Mm-hmm.
actual file, um, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
But like I mean, my largest exposure to Steam for a long period of time there was probably through like Jim Sterling doing like Jimquisition or his like Steam, whatever his Steam series was,
it's
that was just talking about like all of the crappy asset flips that were going up on Steam and the developers that were just putting up the same garbage over and over and over again. It reminds me almost of the cheap and easy trophies that like Greg will always go after. Is like his games that are super basic and if they're selling for $3 a piece and people just want like an extra 1,000 achievement points or something like that, they were going after them. But I know there are definitely tiers of like if it's going into early access or something, then that gets more eyes on it because it's now featured on more pages or something like that. Kind of there's like a level of quality behind it. So cool, I can appreciate that. Well, cool. I hope they are able to kind of ramp up their development adjustments to kind of meet the I'm sure what will be overwhelming demand, just like Among Us had last year, kind of stuff. So very cool. Let's switch it over to. I will talk a little bit about Maquette. This is a game that. If you're listening to this in March of 2021, you can go redeem it on PlayStation. Even if you don't have a PS5 right now, you can go redeem it for the PS5 and it will be there waiting for you. Or you can pick it up on PS4 and it's probably out on Steam and some other things. It's an Annapurna puzzle game. The way I've described it to people is it's basically like Florence from a couple years ago in terms of like, oh, it's telling a story about like a relationship through puzzles. But the puzzles this time around are much more inspired by stuff like or drawing from stuff like Superliminal, or Manifold Garden and stuff like that. You're playing basically in this recursive world. So there's like this diorama that you can kind of like walk around the maquette. And when you're in there, you can kind of pick things up and you can drop something in the maquette and it will. There's basically like a larger version of the maquette that you are existing in, and then there's like a smaller version. So there's typically like 3 layers of it, where you might have to take something that's like normal size in your world, like drop it outside of the thing, and then you can go to the smaller maquette, pick it up, and it's like a pebble-sized thing, and you can run around with it, or you break out of the normal sized one that you're living in, and then you're in like giant land of like Super Mario Brothers or something like that, and there's basically everything is giant around you. I want to say it's like 7 levels, I think, 7 kind of different stages, and each one has just kind of like a few objectives that you kind of go through, and as you fulfill, as you solve a puzzle, as you kind of unlock a door or something like that, you'll kind of start to hear the story of this relationship. I don't remember the actor's name, but the actress, who of course is attached to it and kind of made some waves, is Bryce Dallas Howard. And you're basically, I mean, from the off, you're kind of examining this relationship that has clearly presumably ended because you're discovering like your old sketchbook that the two of you shared, and so you kind of discover that both the character you're kind of playing as ish sort of thing, and Bryce Dallas Howard's character, they have like a meet cute and they kind of like sketch and have some fun drawing together, and that kind of is the kickoff of their relationship, and so there will, as you kind of encounter these little cutscenes throughout the game, a lot of them will be told. You'll just be hearing dialogue. You're never seeing these two characters at all. You're just hearing dialogue as a sketch gets drawn, kind of on the environment around you, and kind of a scene plays out between the two characters, and then you kind of go back and something in the world has opened up and unlocked, and now you have to go solve another puzzle to kind of get the next step. It's really cool. I had a really good time with it. I want to say My first playthrough of it was maybe 3 hours, 4 hours total. And that was because I got hung up on some puzzles and had to kind of like step away and maybe like rethink some things. And then I went through afterwards, after I'd kind of done everything and got the platinum. And to get the platinum for it, there's basically like speed runs for each level that you have to do. It's like do this first level within like 4 minutes and 10 seconds, and then this like second level within 9 minutes or something like that. And so if you kind of do each of those, I mean, you can very quickly just burn through the game in less than an hour if you really like know exactly what you're doing and have all the puzzles and know exactly where you need to go next and skip all the cutscenes and stuff. But yeah, other than that, like the 4 hour kind of like timeline was a really cool thing. Great performances from kind of the two leads in there as you kind of hear the rise and fall of this relationship. It definitely had me examining like old relationships that I've had and stuff, and I think there's an examination in there of remembering the high points versus the low points of a relationship and which ones kind of stand out, or what are those things that will just spark random memories. There's like one chapter of the game in particular that's kind of like this character being like, I thought I was past things and had moved on, and then just suddenly something snapped and I immediately fell down this rabbit hole of like re-examining the what ifs of the relationship or something like that, and that definitely resonated with me.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah. In terms of like thinking back on some of those things and like, oh, if I had done something differently, or if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now, how would things have played out differently, all that kind of stuff. So there's a cool emotional beat to this, but I think also I think the game is certainly much more about the gameplay of trying to solve these puzzles and looking at this world in different ways to solve things and identify the appropriate path through a lot of the game's kind of little puzzles. So yeah, that's Maquette. I don't know if I have that much more to say about it. I really enjoyed it. It's Annapurna, so it has a lot of those very Annapurna vibes to it. I mean, like I said, Florence was an Annapurna game a couple years ago, and I know you and I particularly have had conversations about Florence, and that you thought it was an overpriced game, even at $3 on mobile or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I since I picked it up on PS Plus, I don't even know necessarily what the actual like going price is for the game. I think it's like a $20 game, maybe 25 or something like that. It definitely has like more production value behind it than Florence, obviously. But yeah, it's certainly it's a great PS Plus game. I will definitely say that. Especially if like puzzles aren't necessarily your thing, you can go in, try it out, like kind of like the Game Pass. No harm, no foul if you don't end up liking it. Again, only on PS5 right now. But if not, it's maybe if you're not like a huge puzzle guy or something like that. I mean, definitely like look at a trailer of the game to see what I'm talking about. If that didn't resonate or doesn't make sense, and that'll kind of clue you in on like, okay, this is the kind of thing I'd be interested in or not. Otherwise, wait for it to go on sale or something like that. But I had a really good time with it, and yeah, it was a nice. It was my 99th platinum, so now I got to figure out what I'm going to do if I'm going to do anything big for number 100. But yeah, that was my time with Maquette. Cool little thing. I'm a huge fan of puzzle games, as I think I've talked about on the show before, and very fitting. I will give a shout out while we're here talking about it. The Blessing show this week from our friend Blessing Adeoye Jr. over at Kind of Funny was all about what makes puzzle games work. So it was a perfect timing for that as he discusses puzzle games as well as an interview with the creator behind Manifold Garden, talking about that game. So definitely check that out as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed Maquette and my time with it. So a nice way to spend an evening earlier this week. So let's throw it back over to you, Cam. Tell me about Final Fantasy XIV and the latest updates you've been going through. You're all post game now, all ready to go.
Well, so my Final Fantasy XIV experience, an update on that is I finally hit endgame. And by endgame, I mean, so in Final Fantasy XIV, like a lot of MMOs, you have an iteration, which is the expansion, which is the big number. So, for example, Shadowbringers, which is the latest expansion, was the 5.0 update expansion for the game Final Fantasy XIV. The interim patches are usually where you get big content drops. 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5 is usually where you start to see the culmination after about a year or two, with 5.4 and 5.5 kind of closing up all the leftover story beats and stuff that need to be taken care of.
Before we get to 6.0, which
Yep, before we get to
is
6.0.
that's the one that's where they're going to the moon.
To the moon! Where, like, it's been really cool because I will say, Final Fantasy, so there's a lot of thematics, because it's a Final Fantasy game, it's going to be pulling from the thematics of prior Final Fantasy games, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of 4, 5, and 6, a lot of 6 vibes from the content in Shadowbringers. Like, it's very, very good, very, very on point. And for them then to... It's great because the mascot icon character that is on the kind of like the center focus, you're the quote-unquote stand-in for the Warrior of Light, the character you play in the game. They change jobs depending upon like what are the new jobs, or not even what the new jobs are, but just like each expansion they change up their job, just to show off something new. In Shadowbringers it was Dark Knight, and in Endwalker, where it's a game where you go to the moon, it's now Paladin. So it's a total tongue-in-cheek reference to Cecil's transformation from the Dark Knight of like Baron's Dark Knight to the Paladin savior of the world, where he goes to the moon. A lot of people are like, are we going on a lunar whale? And it's like, no, it actually looks like we're going to be taking a Ragnarok-class dreadnought, which is the ship that you see in the icon for it.
I mean, but you can get the lunar whale as a mount. I remember seeing that come out.
Yeah, you can. It's super cool.
All direct nods to Final Fantasy IV for those that are not as versed in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's great. I've been so inspired by just really good storytelling in the 5.4 patch, which ends it puts the final nail in the coffin, or rather it ties up the loose ends of the first Nordvance it answers the final questions that we got from the Shadowbringers, and does it in a really satisfying way that includes some really awesome and really entertaining and challenging fights that include fighting essentially every big boss is some kind of homage to a prior character, whether it's the primals being the summons that you get, to it being like the last boss you fight is Eden from Final Fantasy VIII. And what's crazy is that over the course of the 5.1 to 5.4 raids that you've been doing, it's funny that they're called raids because they all are basically trials, not raids. But I digress.
I don't even know what the difference is between those things. So,
trials is usually just a single boss fight, and raids are usually like a series, like a giant version of a dungeon.
Okay.
Man, it's been so good. The story that they've been telling with it has been so great. And now finally getting to the end of that, it's my first time as a Final Fantasy XIV player getting to this point in any expansion and any update. I've always been playing quote unquote catch up. I've always been not partaking in these end of the high end game content. and getting and being able to has just been an absolute pleasure. I I've grown as a player from it because it's been some challenging stuff. Fun note: I mentioned Eden before. Uh, in the Eden fight, she literally junctions prior primals that you faced to then use their abilities, a la the draw system from Final Fantasy VIII.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
it's Here's the thing: it's actually a really cool mechanic because
No, it's not.
um, no,
In Final
first off,
Fantasy 14 it is? Okay.
yeah, in Final Fantasy 14, it's super cool because it's the way that it's because leading up to it, you've been fighting. You basically use your memories of these primals to essentially help save this wasteland. And so you're using the elemental primals to gather that elemental aether to essentially bring life back into this area and save the world. Like you already saved the world at the end of by the end of Shadowbringers, the expansion, the 5.0 launch of the expansion. But now you're setting the planet back up for success, and that's awesome. It's just a great way to end things. It introduces some new characters who, over the course from the 5.1 to now 5.4 patch, we've gotten to know that has tie-ins to prior characters and other stuff. That it's done extremely well, and man, it is very heartfelt and heart moving. And I've really enjoyed it. So I'm really excited. 5.5 should be coming out sometime in late spring, early summer, which because we are going to be getting Endwalker this fall.
Yeah, I was gonna say if 5.5 is basically the one that's gonna be timed with like the PS5 version of the game coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Endwalker in the fall. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing the 5.5 check in. It's definitely, we've talked about this a lot. Like I loved the brief time I put into Final Fantasy 14 when I tried it a few years ago, and it is like the love and care that they put in from across the Final Fantasy spectrum. When you say like, oh yeah, like the last expansion was very 4, 5, and 6 kind of heavy, I will always remember I want to say it was one of my paladin missions in kind of the base Realm Reborn or whatever, where it basically like the mission was basically like a retread of the Barret and Dyne scenes from Final Fantasy VII, but with your character or with like different characters kind of playing that scene. It's like all the way down to like basically like holding the character and the character just being like giving up and like dropping to his death or whatever in this ravine. Like I remember like playing that and being like, this is really cool. I love this. This is especially like having had 14 had left like or 15 had left a less than stellar taste in my mouth at that time. Like I loved it was the Final Fantasy game that I would love to play. I just too much have too much resistance to the online MMO versions or elements of the game. So it's one I continually look at and like admire from the outside and wish I could get into, but I just know that it's just not for me in that regard. So disappointing, but hey, at least they gave us Final Fantasy VII remake, and I really connected with that. So yay, Final Fantasy's back in my good graces.
There we go.
We'll see how Ever Crisis, and I don't think I'm going to be playing like First Soldier or whatever. The battle royale that they're doing with it. Although like
the mobile battle royale.
Mobile battle royale, yeah. Looks like they definitely put like resources into it and seem to be going for like that Call of Duty on mobile kind of audience. So, maybe I mean it seems like the kind of thing that I'm sure will do really well in Japan. Probably will not translate over here. But hey, maybe Ever Crisis will. And especially like the thing that gives me the most hope about Ever Crisis is damn Brave Exvius War of the Visions or whatever that you got me hooked on a year ago, and I have continued to play and check in pretty much every day and stuff. And that has been very much a like episodic kind of like monthly.
Mhm.
They release new story missions and stuff for you to go through. I've long since cared about anything story wise, but I still play and like I'm grinding and leveling up characters and stuff. And so it gives me hope that with Ever Crisis, a story that I am connected to and interested in revisiting in like an episodic format, hopefully that that draws me in as well, and maybe can replace my War of the Visions addiction right now. If it does not, Project Triangle Strategy certainly will, because that definitely scratched that itch. But yeah, very cool. There's our Final Fantasy update round robin corner thing there. So I will close out with kind of a dueling. I don't have a ton to say on either of them necessarily, because I'm still very much like in early stages on both of them. But I've been playing, as I said at the top, Bravely Default 2, and then switching over and hopping into Yakuza Like a Dragon. I will say of those two, Yakuza Like a Dragon is definitely like getting its teeth in me way more. Probably because it is the like in a weird way it is the Earthbound successor that I've been longing for many many years, because it is just so off the walls out there.
Okay, yeah.
And I
All right.
definitely appreciate like it. If I went into this having never played a Yakuza game, I would
Mhm.
probably still admire like the absurdity, but because I've played Kiwami 1, 2 and Yakuza 0, there are definitely like references and callbacks. Like the first summon I got in the game, like he shows up and I immediately recognize him as like, this figure that has been in all of the other games before that and stuff like that. And so like there's like the second one I got is this giant, Yakuza who has a fetish for dressing up like a baby, who I remember either from Kiwami 2 or from Yakuza 0 or something like that. And so when he shows up and like I start doing the sub quest, or like the sub story that leads up to him, I'm like, I wonder if this is going to go where I think it's going to go. And then sure enough, like he pops up. I'm like, yep, it's that guy. It's that guy again, who loves dressing up as a boss baby, basically. So
So
just
weird.
like it is very much like another kind of game that is clearly drawing from love and adornment for the whole franchise of Yakuza, but the fact that they've switched it up from going this action adventure kind of game into full on JRPG. Your main character Ichiban is obsessed with Dragon Quest and basically sees the world through the lens of Dragon Quest. So instead of being a Yakuza who could just like beat up people just like Kiryu could, he does the honorable thing that a hero would do and gives like the enemies a turn to fight back. And so he takes a turn and then his enemies take a turn and he brings in like a party of people and it's just like it's a ton of fun. Ichiban, very, at his core, very good, loving kind of character, just like Kiryu is, but without necessarily like all of the emo angsty drama of Kiryu. So he's a ton of fun to see, and I'm really enjoying like the supporting cast of characters around him. And then on the flip side, Bravely Default 2 is very much more like throwback to like the really really kind of like early turn-based stuff. Doesn't have the like fun outlandishness of like an Earthbound, something like that.
Mhm.
And I the biggest thing that is turning me off from Bravely Default 2 really is there's just like a wild difficulty spike anytime you go and face like off against a boss. Like I've got my party and I'm going through and I'm like leveling up and I'm grinding through their job classes and stuff to make sure they're powered and doing pretty well. And like I will go through and have no problem with like the overworld enemies or something like that, or even going into a dungeon and kind of facing off against the enemies in there. But I will get to the end of that dungeon and face off against one of the asterisk holders in the game. For those that don't know, the asterisks are basically what allow you to have new job classes.
Mhm.
You basically get an asterisk, and suddenly now you can turn into a red mage and start kind of leveling up those skills. And
Yep.
so like fighting against the bosses that, hold those asterisks that you will then get after you defeat them, like each of those has been like a 20-minute ordeal for
Mm.
those fights. It's like your normal enemies are having, like 300 to 500 health or something like that. These guys have like 20,000 health, and
Jeez.
they can counter almost every attack you have or something like that. So even when you're attacking them or something, they're doing as much damage in between attacks as they're doing on their real attacks. And
Gosh.
there's just not as
Okay.
a good a way to like whittle down their health. So it's been so like those I end up dreading those when I like I realize I'm about to come up to one of those in the store. I'm just like, God, I'd rather go and like grind up my white mage and get, all their abilities and stuff going, more so than go off and do that next big fight, because I know I'm going to be in it for the long haul, and there doesn't seem to be a good way for me to like really prepare or over prepare for it. They're just so far out of reach that I would have to grind for, probably 5 hours before I could even put even more of a dent into them than just slowly whittling away their health. So that's been like the biggest detriment that Bravely Default has against it, I guess. Apart from that, it's fun. It is very much like a throwback to just like the original Bravely Default and Bravely Second were. Throwback to those kind of the Final Fantasy fours of RPGs and Final Fantasy V and stuff like that. More so than Yakuza Like a Dragon, that is just like they do a great job with Yakuza taking all of like the staples of Yakuza and turning them into a JRPG trope. Be it like the items that you can kind of get, the tools and the weapons and stuff. And the classes are a ton of fun. I turned one of my characters. One of my characters is an idol. So she's out there kind of learning like support magic spells that can heal my whole party. One of my guys is a break dancer and is going out there and like doing a lot of damage, kicking butt for me. Uh, Kiryu was a host for a while, and I kind of leveled him up through, or not Kiryu, Ichiban was a
Ichiban.
host, and I kind of got him like near the top rank of hosts, so he kind of unlocked most of his abilities there. And I've switched him just recently to a bodyguard class. And one of mine, I forget what the class type is, but I just changed her from an idol to basically like S&M dominatrix kind of thing. And so she's out there like beating enemies around with like a ball and chain. The enemies are a ton of fun. They're all like tongue-in-cheek things. One of them was like impertinent or something like that, but it's like imp pertinent. No, it's imp patient. And so it's a guy
Yeah.
walking around with like like an IV and like in a hospital gown. But he'll fight you and he'll cast spells that'll cause you to get sick or something like that. So it's just a very fun, like modern approach to a JRPG, using kind of like one of the enemy types I saw was like a Twitchy streamer or something like that. It's obviously very clearly a Twitch streamer, and so yeah, just a lot of fun, very postmodern, a la an Earthbound kind of approach to a JRPG, and I'm having a great time with it. And yeah, I'm again still pretty early. I think I'm only in like chapter 5 of that game or something like that. And I think I'm only in like chapter 2 of Bravely Default, but having a great time, kind of switching back and forth between the two. But right now, Yakuza Like a Dragon definitely kind of has its hooks in me, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So that's my JRPG corner, as kind of in response to your MMO JRPG corner of Final Fantasy XIV. So yeah, unless you have anything else to bring to the table, Cam, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you for joining me to give me the rundown of Valheim and your Final Fantasy XIV updates. You can follow
For
Cameron
sure.
at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love, give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, two things. I want to give a shout out first off to we just put out WandaVision spoiler cast about the final episodes and talking about our thought processes. It is a return to form for us in a way because we brought in some really awesome guests in Mario Rivera as well as I just know him as Josh
Josh
from
Silverman.
Bear Punch.
Yeah.
Josh Silverman from Bear Punch Media. Um, it was an awesome time talking with these guys about this show and about Marvel and the Marvel cinematic universe and other things like that. So
And Nick at
go
Night.
check that out.
we all
And Nick and, a
we
lot of
all
Nick and
gushed
Night.
about Nick at Night. Frank is on the show as well. Frank kind of
Oh,
made his
yeah,
return to the content.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean Frank's been missing for a little bit because of technical issues, but yeah, like definitely for sure. But he's there. I wasn't gonna reference like the three of us
Mhm.
for it, so that's why I didn't name Frank. But it's great. Frank's awesome. Love you, Frank, if you're watching this. But the second thing I'm gonna give a shout out to is Alex O'Neill. Like finally going to be on some kind of funny content after years of trying to make that work. No, it's great to finally see him kind of like step more into a spotlight than he's been in before, which is nice. Like it's just he's a dear friend of ours, and he's somebody who you know really has been putting in a lot of work over more than a decade in this industry. So yeah, very excited for him.
Yep. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I basically echo both those. Shout out to this week's That D Plus show on WandaVision. Go check that out, as well as, Alex is going to be on Kind of Funny Games Daily this Friday. If you're listening to this the week this goes live. And it's very much like he, I think was very much an inspiration to both of us kind of early on in our content creation sphere. As one of the first people, both of us, I think, met in the Kind of Funny community at that first Kind of Funny Live weekend. And I think we all hit it off very well and kind of, like we've all kind of leaned on each other and supported each other over the years. So it's cool seeing him finally get to kind of make that jump, especially after he was originally going to try and do something with them last year in San Francisco, but the pandemic hit and threw all those plans threw a wrench in all those plans. So cool to see him. He's going to be on with Greg, right, on Friday?
Yep.
Yeah.
On Friday.
Obviously, they both of us were at the Irrational Passions Extra Life a few years ago, where Greg and Joey and Jen came out and did Extra Life with all of us as well. And so, very cool to see kind of this thing that's been many years in the making, I would say. Hopefully he has a great time with it. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content from us. I will also, I guess, give a little shout out. It's embargoed as of the time this episode will go live, but check out tomorrow's Let's Play on the channel for an embargoed game that will just be coming out this week. I can go see me playing that. So, there's a tease for that. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with all your friends, and maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show, That Nerdy Site Show. Thank you again, Cam, for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.